Aleph, the third line, the two dots. Tanarabanan. If you are my wife, you are my arusa, you are acquired to me, mekudeshes. She's mekudeshes to him. Harayat shali, you're mine. Harayat pershusi, you're in my domain. Harayat zkukali, you're connected to me, mekudeshes. She's also mekudeshes with these three lashonos. So the Gemara asks, "V'lisninaihu, v'litaninhu, kulo kachada." Why doesn't it just list all of these six lashonos in one clause? So the Gemara answers, Tana tlashamina v'garsinu. The Tana heard one statement with these three lashonos, and he heard a separate statement with those three lashonos, so he said it over the way he heard them. Yibaylahu, we have a question. Miyuchedesli, if you're okay, so miyuchad would mean special, but Rashi and the Ran say that it's from the word echad. You're united with me. Mahum, miyuchedesli, you're not dedicated, but it's along those lines. Because Yud is, designated something like that. Yud for I'm an Avria who's going to marry the master. What's the halacha? Ezrasi, you're my Azer, because we know Azer Kenegdo. So if Ezrasi, my helper, what's the din? Negdasi, opposite me. What's the din? Atsurasi Mahu. Rashi says that, and the Rishonim, it's from the Lashon Atzeres, like Shmini Atzeres is a festival where Hashem is with the Jewish people, together, gathered into the house together. Salasi Mahu, my rib, because we know that Chava was taken from the rib of Adam. Sugurasi, Rashi says Vayiskar Basar Tachtana, they were the flesh was closed. So it had to do with Adam and Chava. So Tachti Mahu, if you're under me, what's the halacha? Tfusasi Mahu, you're grabbed to me. Asher lo nitzvasa is that by a shivcha charufa. Maybe lukuchasi mahu, you're taken as mine. What's halacha? So if he uses these lashon instead of mekudeshes or miyuedes, what's halacha? So the Gemara doesn't know, but it says peshot miachada. We should at least have an answer for one of these. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, Omer lukuchasi harezu mekudeshes mishum shenemer kikach ishisha. You are taken to me. She is mekudeshes because the pasuk says kikach ishisha, and this is a lashon of the pasuk for kicha. So kicha is a good lashon, lekuchasi. Yibaylahu charufasi mahu. So shivcha charufa is a half woman, half shivcha, meaning she was owned by two partners, and one of them freed her and one of them didn't. So she's partially freed, partially not. But she's engaged to someone, so she's a din safek. So what's halacha? Tashma we learned in the Brisa. The Tanya Tashma, let's learn. The Tanya is we learned in the Brisa. Ha'omer charufasi mekudeshes sheken bihuda karin larusa charufa. If you say charufasi, harayat charufasi, she is married because in Yehuda, the region of Eretz Yisrael called Yehuda, they called an arusa charufa. So the Gemara asks, Yehuda havi ruba de alma? Is Yehuda the majority of the world? That because it's the language in Yehuda that makes it good everywhere? Hachikamar. No. So this is what the Brisa meant. Ha'omer charufasi mekudeshes. If you said harayat charufasi, she is married to him, as the pasuk says, v'hi shivcha necharefes leish, because this shivcha who is engaged to someone, the word charufa is used in the pasuk. Va'od b'Yehuda karin larusa charufa. And another reason it works, besides for being lashon of the pasuk, is that in Yehuda they called an arusa charufa. So the Gemara asks, "Yehuda va'od lekra." So the pasuk isn't good enough. You need to know that that's what they call it in Yehuda. Yehuda adds something to the pasuk. Elahafi kamar. So this is what the Brisa means. Ha'omer charufa b'Yehuda mekudeshes. If in Yehuda you were mekadesh anisha by saying harayat charufali or harayat charufasi, then you're mekudeshes in that region. Shekin b'Yehuda karin larusa charufa, because in that region they called an arusa charufa. But mayaskinan. So now the Gemara is saying, in generally for all these halachas that we had a question if they're lashon or Kiddushin or not. What's the situation? Rashi points out it's also for the Lashonos of Gerushin, which I guess would be from the bottom of Hayam and Beis. If they're not even talking about being married, about marriage, how would these Lashonos would be out of the blue? So of course she wouldn't be Mekudesh. She doesn't know what he's talking about. So we have to say where the man and the woman are talking about a get, and he uses one of these Lashonos. So they're talking about marriage, and he uses one of these Lashonos. So then the Gemara says, well, if they're talking about that, Afagav Delo Amar La Nami, if he would give her something, they'd be Mekudeshes, even if he didn't actually use one of these words. Ditnan, because we learned in a Mishnah in Meiser Sheni, if they were talking about a get and he gave her a get, or they were talking about marriage and he gave her money for Kiddushin, but he didn't explicitly say this is for your Kiddushin or this is your get. Rabbi Yossi Amar Dayo, Rabbi Huda Mitzarach Lefarish. Rabbi Yossi says that's enough, even without an explicit statement, Hariyat Mekudeshesli or Hariyat Megreshesli, Hariyat Materes Chaladam, if it's a get. They're divorced or they're married. Rabbi Huda says, no, he still has to explicitly say it. The Amar Rabbi Huda Amar Shmuel Ha'achak Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Huna said in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, we pass like Rabbi Yossi. So if they're talking about marriage issues and then he gives her money, it's Mekudeshes, even if he doesn't say Atzu Rasi or Ezrasi. So Leolam b'medaber imaliski gita v'kiddusha. So really, they are talking about marriage. The edi yavlavashasa kachinami. And if he just gave her a ring or something and he didn't say anything, they are married because the context in which he gave it is talking about marriage. So obviously he's giving it for marriage. But hachamayaskina, and when is this shaila? The yahivla va'amarla bahani lishni. So meaning it seems that they weren't talking about so he gave her this lashon. He gave her the ring, and he used this lashon. And this is the question: Hani lishon the kiddusha kamerla or dilma lemlacha kamerla? Were these lashonos talking about kiddushin or just talking about work? I want you to work for me, and that's what he means. So teku, we don't have an answer to that. So it seems that the Gemara is ignoring now the fact of Hayay Medaber Ima, but that's strange because it just said they were talking. So rather you have to say that they were talking about Kiddushin, but you use an unusual Lashon. Using an unusual Lashon is worse than saying nothing. Using the unusual Lashon is worse than saying nothing. So you might make it worse if you wouldn't say anything and just give it to her because you're talking about marriage. She'd be Mekudeshes, but because he uses a strange Lashon, it ruins it. Gufa hayimdaber ima ishaliske get to v'kiddushav and also get to v'kiddushav lo pireish Rabbi Yossi Omer Daya Rabbi Yehuda Omer Tzarech Lefareish. So the Mishnah that we just quoted from Meiser Sheni, if they were talking about a man and woman were talking about marriage, and then he gave her a ring, and he didn't say Haret Mekudeshes. Rabbi Yossi says they're married. Rabbi Yehuda says they're not. And same thing if they're talking about divorce, and then he gives her a get. He doesn't have to say Haret Materes Chaladam. Or it's a machloka. Rabbi Yossi would say that he doesn't have to say Haret Materes Chaladam, they'd be divorced. Rabbi Yehuda or Shmuel says he still has to. So the Gemara says, V'hu sha'asukin ba'oso inyan. That's when they are talking about that inyan. V'chein amar Rabbi Lazar amar Rabbi Oshia, V'hu sha'asukin ba'oso inyan. Well, obviously, we said Hayim Medaber Ima. So what is it? And so they're already talking about it. So what do you mean they're ba'oso inyan? So Kitanai, because there's a machlokas in the Tosefta Kiddushin about this. Rabbi Omer B'Husha Sukin Bosa Inyan. They're talking about that issue, that matter about marriage or about divorce. Rabbi Lazar ben Rabbi Shimon Omer Afa Pisha Eno Sukin Ba'oso Inyan. Even it works even when they're not talking about that specific Inyan. The question is if they're not talking about that specific Inyan, V'i Lavda Sukin Bosa Inyan Mena Yada Mai Kamar. If they're not talking about it, how does she know why he's giving her something? Maybe he's giving something to her as a consignment to sell. How do we know that he's giving it to her as Kiddushin? So They were talking about marriage issues, and then they went into a tangent. What kind of tangent? Rashi says they weren't talking about Kiddushin itself, but they were talking about other things, but related to the marriage. How much dowry are you going to bring in? How much property do you own so you'll have a good living? So they weren't talking about Kiddushin itself, but they were talking about once they're married. So Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon is a little more lenient that they don't have to be talking about Kiddushin itself, but just how they will finance, how they'll have parnasa. Rav Huna Mar Shmuel halacha Rabbi Yossi. Rav Huna Mar Shmuel said halacha Rabbi Yossi that because they're already talking about it, about Kiddushin, and he gives her a ring. The ring is obviously for Kiddushin. He doesn't have to make a statement of Haret Mekudeshasi. Amar le Rav Yemar le Rav Ashi ve'lahad Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel kol she'enu yodea b'tiv gittin v'kiddushin le esak iman. Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel said, if people don't know the details of laws of gittin and kiddushin, you can't deal with them. You can't let them answer shilas or be a dayan for that thing. Afilu lo shmielu hu had Rav Huna Amar Shmuel. Does that apply even if they don't know this psak of Rav Huna Amar Shmuel that we pass on to Rabbi Yossi? Yes, this is an important enough halacha that if they don't know it, you can't let them be a dayan or a posek for these things. So Rashi says this word was just saying, is this a shaila that comes up often enough? And so the answer is yes, it comes up often enough. It's a real issue, so you have to know the halacha in that case. 2 dots, 4 lines up from the bottom. And similarly in divorce, if he gave her get, and he said, you're sent away, you're divorced, or you are permitted for everyone, she is divorced. The Gemara says, the second to last line of Vav Aleph, Pshita, if he gave her get and said, you are free, he didn't say anything. He didn't make the right statement, she's not divorced. If he told his shivcha, his slave, you're permitted to anyone, he didn't say anything. That's not the right lashon for a shivcha. Shivcha, you have to say free. For your wife, if you're divorcing her, you have to say you're permitted to anyone. But if you told your wife you're to yourself, what's halacha? Does he mean does he mean you're on your own from malacha? I'm not going to feed you, or what you make from your job you get to keep, or is he saying you're on your own completely because you're separated from me? Ravina said to Ravashi, Toshma, let's bring a proof from a brisa, or actually a mishnah, Ditanya, Ditnan, Gufo shall get chichar hariat baschorin hariat la'atzmacha. The essence of a get which frees your slave is you are a freed man, or you are to yourself. So hashdoma eved kanani dekanile gufe kiamarle hariat la'atzmacha legamri ka'amarle ish lo kanile gufo kol shekain. So he said, if an Eved Kanani, who you own, you literally own his body because he's a slave to you. If you say you're to yourself, he becomes free. A wife that you don't actually own her, like you own a slave, if you say you're to yourself, it certainly works. So he paskins that it works as a lashon for get. Amarle Ravina Ravashi, Amarla Avdo Ainli Esablichamai. If Ravina asked Ravashi, if you said to your slave, I will not have any business with you, or no dealings with you, what's halacha? Does he mean that he's going to not have anything relate? He's breaking off the relationship completely, meaning he's not a slave anymore, or he's only saying, you're still going to be my slave, but you work, you can feed yourself off your work. I'm not going to take the money that you make or the work that you do. Amarle, Rav Nachman the Rav Ashi. So Rav Nachman said to Rav Ashi, so Ravina asked Rav Ashi, it doesn't say anything. And now we have Rav Nachman said to Rav Ashi, Rav Chanan Mechuzal Rav Ashi Tashma. Let's bring an answer to this. Hamocher Avdullah Avikocham. It's a little strange because the person who asked was Ravina, and no one's answering to Ravina. Someone else is giving the answer to Rav Ashi, who received the question. If you sell your Eved to a goy, to a pagan, he goes free and he needs a bill of divorce. So this is talking about an Eved Kanani. So even though Eved Kanani isn't fully Jewish, when he became an Eved Kanani, he had a partial gerus, so he was already chayav in negative commandments. So by the fact that you sell him to a pagan, he's not going to be able to do those mitzvahs. So he goes free, but he needs to get shechor from his master Merabah Rishon, the master, his first master who sold him to the non-Jew. When does he need to get shechor? If you didn't write ono, but if you wrote ono, that is a text that frees him. Ono. So what does it mean that you wrote an ono? If he wrote, if you run away from me, I have nothing to do with you. So then he goes free. So we see from here that Ainli Asik has a connotation of being freed as a get shechor. 2 dots in the middle of Vav Amar Rabbi. Have a Kaddish B'Melva, Einam Kudeshes, Banas Melva Mekudeshes. If you're Mekadesh with Rabbi says if you Mekadesh a woman with a loan, she's not Mekudeshes. So that means you had lent her money, and now you're saying, I'm going to forgive the loan. And the fact that I'm forgiving the loan, you're married to me with that. So that does not work, because we're going to learn that Milva Lotzan Nitna, a loan is meant to be spent. So at the time of the Kiddushin, she's not getting any money because she already spent the money. Or even if she didn't spend the money, loans are to be spent. So it's as if he didn't give her anything right now, and you have to give her something for Kiddushin. Banas Milva Mekudeshes. But if for the benefit of extending a loan, we'll see in a couple lines that that's what this means. But if he wants to be Mekadesh, or not for the cancellation of the loan, but for a benefit of the loan, she is married, but you're not allowed to do it because it looks like ribbis. It's not real interest, but it looks like you're charging her more or less. There's some type of discount, so it's like ribbis. So hayanas melva hechidami. So what does it mean, the benefit of a loan? If he's actually canceling part of it, so he lent her $400, and she had to pay him back $500, and then he's canceling. So there was $100 interest, and then he's canceling that extra $100. So that's not haramas ribis. That doesn't look like ribis. That's actual ribis. So for sure that doesn't work. The ode hainu milva, and also that's also being mekadosh with the actual loan itself. That's not haramas milva. So the Gemara answers no. No. So the answer is he's extending the time. So let's say he had a loan for 30 days, and now he's extending it to 90 days. So the fact that she doesn't have to rush to pay back the loan so much, that benefit of the extension of the loan, that it's not coming due yet, that's worth money, and she can't be mekudeshes with that. Amar Rava. Rava says, Hilach mana manashe techzireu li. If you said, here's a money, you could have this $100, but you have to, on condition that you're going to return it to me. But mecher lo kana, if you try to buy something with that, you're saying, here, I'm giving you $100 for this shirt, but you have to return the money to me. That's not a sale. Now, obviously, b'mecher, you can't be kona metatlim with money. So Rashi correctly points out that we're talking about buying karka, because you could buy karka with money. You could buy real estate with money. You can't buy, or the kinyan, the acquisition, the change of ownership doesn't take place with metatlim with money. You have to do a kinyan, lifting it up or doing something like that. If you try to be mekadesh a woman like this, here's $1,000, you're gonna have to return it to me. Then she's not mekudeshes. The pigeon aben ain't no podoi. If you're redeeming your firstborn son from a kohen, your son is not redeemed. You gave him the 5 shekel, and you said, but you have to give it back to me. Son's not redeemed. But truma yatzidei nasina basur lasu combination erka kohenim siya beveis agranos. If you said to the kohen, here's truma, and I'm giving it to you, but you have to return it to me. So you fulfilled giving it. So it seems that your other produce is not tevel anymore. Rashi says, but Rashi points out, if you gave it to the kohen, but he has to give it back to you, what use is it for you? You can't eat it because it's truma. So he answers, you're able to sell it to a different kohen to eat, and you get to keep the money. but you're not allowed to do this because it looks like a Kohen is helping in the granary, and he's working for it, and it's not like it's being given to him. And the truma should be given to the Kohen. So Mike Savar. So what's the halacha? What did Rava feel in regard to this Almanasha Tichzireli? If a gift that you're saying this is fully yours, but you're going to have to give it back to me, if that is considered a gift, then all of them, it should be that the sale took place, the Kiddushin took place, the Pidyon Ben took place, the Truma was fully given. And if temporarily given this gift that on condition that you have to return it doesn't work, how come it works for Truma and not for anything else? But and furthermore, Rava Huda Amar Matana Manasa Hachzer Shema Matana. We know that Rava himself holds that you give a gift on condition that it gets returned to you, it is a good gift. The Amar Rava Hilach Esrog Zal Manashe Tichzireuli, not Lo Bechziru Yatza. Vimlav Lo Yatza. If someone gave you on Sukkot an esrog and said, this esrog is fully yours on the first day of Sukkot when you have to own your lulav, this is yours on the condition that you return it to me. He takes the arba minim and then he gives the esrog back. Then he fulfilled it because he fulfilled the condition of this gift. So it was fully his at the time that he took the lulav and esrog. The lav lo yatza. But if he didn't return it, it's not his because he didn't fulfill the tanai. It wasn't his when he took it, so he didn't fulfill his mitzvah. So of course he holds it. So how come it doesn't work for Mecher? How come it doesn't work for Kiddushin? How come it doesn't work for Pidyon Ben? Elam Rav Ashi Bekulhu Kani Levarmi Isha. No, so rather the statement must have been that in all these cases it does work, except for Kiddushin. If you're Mekadesh and Isha with Matana Manachza Hachzer, she is not Mekudeshes. Lefisha Ein Isha Niknes Bechalipin, because a woman is not acquired with Chalipin. Chalipin is when you exchange or when you acquire it by giving over a Kli. And Chalipin, we said, could be less than a pruta, so Chalipin doesn't work. And because you're returning it back, it looks like Chalipin. Amli Rav Huna Marbre, Amar Rav Huna, Amali Rav Huna, Rav Huna said to Rav Ashi, Marbre, de Rav Nechemia, Amali Rav Huna, Marbre, de Rav Nechemia, Rav Ashi, Rav Huna, Marbre, de Rav Nechemia said to Rav Ashi, Hachemrina, Lemishmei de Rav Kavaseich. We heard this said exactly the way you explain Rava. We heard this in the name of Rava. So what the Gemara originally quoted was one version of Rava's statement, and then we found out and Rav Ashi interpreted it slightly different to make more sense. And then someone else told him, yes, this is the way we heard the teaching of Rava. So you gave the right explanation.